I'm going to give you a brief history that led up to the Battle of Petersburg, and then take you on a tour of the National Battlefield at Petersburg. The National Park Service has many different kinds of designations. National Battlefield is one of them, and that's where you can go to learn a lot about America's history on the battlefield. Petersburg National Battlefield is one such place, located near Petersburg in Southern Virginia. It is a wonderful place to go and understand part of the American Civil War history. In the spring of 1864, the Union Army wanted to capture Richmond, which is the Confederate capital. They started their attack near Fredericksburg and was heading south. Eventually they got to Cole Harbor, which is just outside of Richmond. They tried a frontal assault on Richmond, but they failed, suffering heavy casualty. So Grant has to figure out what else he can do to capture Richmond. He decided that the best way to do that is to cut off the Confederate supply line, which really means capturing Petersburg to the south of Richmond. So Grant decided to move his troops south, set up a supply port at St. James River, where there is a railroad already leading into Petersburg. This is where the story starts about the Petersburg Battle, otherwise known as Petersburg Siege. Now, the battlefield spans 33 miles from City Point all the way to Five Forks, and these are the places that you get to know a little bit as I describe the park. City Point on the banks of St. James River is important because that's where the logistics and the supply line was set up. It was right on the river so that they can be supplied by boat from a lot of different places. And there's a railroad that leads right into Petersburg from there. So it will make it easy transportation from the port into the city. General Grant established his supply base right on the St. James River. The eastern front part of the park is the main area of the park, and that's where the main visitor center is located. That is also where most of the battle happened, and that's where Petersburg battle started. On June 15, 1864, Grant's army attacked the Confederates at what is known as Battery Number 5, which is just behind the visitor center. The eastern front section of the park has a 4-mile drive with numerous stops that you can stop by and look at the interesting points of the battlefield. If you only have a couple of hours to visit, this is where I would go and take the 4-mile drive, stop by all the points, and read up on the importance of each one of these points. Now, as I said, the battle started on June 15, 1864 at Battery Number 5. The Confederate Army retreated back to Harrison Creek and held there for 2 days, with enough time for the Confederate reinforcements to come, and eventually stopped the Union Army from advancing. By stopping the Union Army from advancing, that's what turned a battle into a siege. Since Grant could not overwhelm the Confederate Army and be able to march into Petersburg, he decided that he's going to start to attack south and west of the city to try to cut the supply lines for the Confederate Army. And those battles happened on the western front part of the park, eventually ending up at Five Forks part of the park. Now, one of the interesting battles at the eastern front, it was on July 30th, 1864, where the Union Army wanted to attack a particular fortification, and they decided to dig under the fort and try to put explosives under the fort so they can blow them up from underneath. And they actually did that. They dug the tunnel, put the explosives in, and blew it up. That was successful. However, they did not move quickly enough to capture the fort, and the Confederate Army sending reinforcements, essentially expelling the Union Army at that location. The Confederates were forced to defend 38 miles of front to the south of Petersburg, and they were having a lot of problems doing so because they were poorly supplied and they were outmanned. So, on March 25th, 1865, realizing that they cannot hold out much longer, General Lee ordered his troops to attack Fort Stedman at the Eastern Front to try to break through the Union line in order to try to get their hands on the supply that is at City Point. So once again, Harrison Creek comes back into the picture. This is the last offensive move that General Lee made from the creek to attack Fort Stedman, and they failed. While they succeeded initially in capturing it, the Union reinforcements came and defeated General Lee's army at Fort Stedman. The Union Army wanted to cut the supply line at Five Forks, where a major rail line came in, as well as the major roads. And on April 1st, 1865, the Union Army defeated the Confederates at Five Forks. General Lee's army was forced to retreat. They abandoned Petersburg and also Richmond. And that effectively spelled the end of the Civil War, where General Lee's army surrendered 7 days later. Petersburg National Battlefield is a nice place to visit, and you can see what the forts look like. I mean, when you see fort, you expect big walls and big stones, and those are not it at this point. Not at Petersburg anyway. These are earthen forts with basically mounds, and people can hide behind the mounds, and that's what we can see today. So don't expect to see big stone forts or anything like that, but it is instructive in how they fought during their day. Petersburg National Battlefield is easy to get to. It's not too far away from Interstate 95. And if you're in the area, by all means, spend a few hours at the battlefield to learn about the history and to really appreciate what happened during the Civil War and the pivotal role Petersburg played in the Civil War history and the defeat of the Confederates. The one thing that I learned about visiting Petersburg is that, sometimes the pitched battle with bayonet, looking at each other and all that is not necessarily how you win the war. Having adequate supply, keeping your men healthy, and having adequately supplied with food and resources is as important, if not more important, to winning the battle and winning the war. The Union Army being able to control the supply line turned out to be a very important part of winning the war. We are on our way to visit all the national parks in the United States. Follow along by hitting the subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new video is released. Give it a thumbs up if you like this video, and please share it with everybody that you know.